Yeah, that's why I say I don't want
a coalition of about 200 orgs working together, bringing all the different expertise that's needed to move policy. And I'm accompanied by
Olga Reina from Monterey County. I'm with United Farm Workers.
Okay.
And
UFW?
yeah.
Yep.
Robert Chakanaka, Monterey Bay Central Labor Council.
Monterey Basin what?
Central Labor Council.
Central Labor. Okay, thank you.
Sarah Gallardo, I'm a student at CSU Monterey Bay, and I'm volunteering with Californians for Pesticide Reform.
Okay.
Ryan Bradley, Sacramento native, but at CSUMB for college, and also at California for Pesticide Reform.
Okay.
Brian's in district.
All right.
On Wes White, Safe Ag, Safe Schools.
Okay. Safe access.
Safe
schools.
Agriculture, Safe Schools.
Oh, okay.
There's a SAS coalition. They're pretty sassy, but it stands for Safe Ag, Safe Schools.
Safe ag, safe schools.
Exactly,
Okay.
and it's a local pesticide coalition, but of course,
Right.
policy all happens at the state level. It's a preemption state, so they organize locally, they connect with other coalitions, and we all try to work on
Got it.
campaigns together.
Okay.
So we want to talk to you about a couple of our coordinated campaigns today.
Okay.
But we do, and I'll just outline the three issue areas, and then we'll
Okay.
divvy it up. So we do have a bill that we are sponsoring. SAS and CPR is sponsoring AB 652, which is Alex Lee's bill that would establish an environmental justice advisory committee at the Department of Pesticide Regulation, which they don't currently have any sort of public-facing accountability, and they're part of Cali PA, as you probably know, because they're not there to protect ag, they're there to protect human and environmental health, but their main stakeholder, which is impacted community members, don't really have a voice. So this would establish an advisory committee comprised of impacted residents, basically. It ties in really nicely with our two main campaigns. One of them is that we're trying to get advanced notification of certain most hazardous pesticide applications. All our members across the years have always said, like, yeah, work on these worst chemicals, but meanwhile, just tell us what you're spraying, because we just want to.
Who do you want to report?
We want.
So the farmer that's applying?
So the growers already have to provide notification to the ag commissioners before they use pesticides that are classified as restricted materials.
How would this change that?
And so the regulation that DPR, the Department of Pesticide Regulation, is currently working on would make that public when the ag commissioner gets that notice.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
you want the notification to be public, not just to the ag commissioner?
Exactly, it
Got
already goes to the ag commissioner, we want it public, but we've got a specific ask on that. And then finally, it sounds a little wonky, but we've been working for many years to increase restrictions on the fumigant pesticide 1,3-dichloropropene.
Well, I know
Have you heard of
it intimately.
It's-
No.
We should all know it. It's the third most heavily used pesticide in California, at 12 million pounds a year, and it's incredibly drift-prone, it's carcinogenic, and it's banned in 34 countries. But in California, it really props up sort of monocropping. It kills the soil, all the bugs in the soil, so that you've got a blank slate and you can just add in your nutrients or whatever, I don't know. It's the opposite of soil health, basically, and it's carcinogenic and drift prone, so it's a real problem. So DPR is in regulation on that, and we'd like to tell you a little bit more about that as well. So should we start with notification?
Yeah, so for notification, my main concern is they're basically saying it's within a 1 by 1 square mile of where it's sprayed, not saying where specifically, where it may drift to. So it's like my campus, CSUMB, is located within like 2-3 miles from the actual fields that's being sprayed onto. So my main concern is the highest reading of like length away from the actual spray site is like over 7 miles. So that would put the college campus well within that parameter. So it would be nice to at least get like something saying it was sprayed here, this is the chemical, this is where it may blow over to. Because on an average day you might have several hundred or potentially 1,000 college students on a campus walking outside, because we do have an open campus. So everyone's walking maybe a mile to class, maybe a half mile to class. And you can't see pesticides, so the concern is we want to be able to get notified so we can either stay in our house, stay in the classroom, maybe take
Of course,
preventative measures.
It makes sense.
Preventative measures to protect our health
Right.
potentially. So something more specific location-wise.
And just for a little bit more backstory or context, as the DPR has $10 million to develop this in the state budget, and what they've proposed, as Ryan says, is not to tell you exactly where the picture a public health notification system that tells you it's somewhere within a mile. They know exactly where it is, but they won't tell you. And the reason we believe that they won't tell us is because the ag industry just does not want that level of scrutiny. They don't want, they worry that there'll be pressure from their neighbors to change their behavior, and they're worried. But what we're saying from the point of view of receiving notification is just knowing roughly within a mile isn't helpful.
Okay.
We want to know exactly. So
hear you.
DPR's not necessarily listening to us. We would love legislative support on that in terms of, well, I actually don't know if that's something that a legislator could write a letter, talk to DPR about, mention that this matters to your constituents, and notification without location isn't really notification at all. It's like a beautiful car with a great paint job that doesn't drive a little bit.
Okay, I agree.
Thank you.
So the farm workers are mainly affected. This community
No question.
is always getting the
The first
brunt of
people
this.
are affected by pesticides
So
are farm
what we
workers.
want in this committee is to be represented, tribal groups, people that have no voice to be heard, and then get back to this committee, that this committee would be the committee to speak for the people and the
You're talking about
The bill,
within
the
the
bill,
Department of
AB,
Pesticide Regulation,
652.
that you have, the Alex Lee bill,
Yes,
yes,
it would
okay.
be very, very good. We don't have anything like that right now.
Right.
And that's what we need right
Right.
now.
We can tell you the status of the bill, if that would be interesting to you.
Well, so here's the thing, so, I mean, it makes sense to allow impacted communities to have a direct channel to the department to express their concerns about any regulation that the department administers. Senator Dodd won't see this bill if it gets over to the Senate and makes it through our hearing process till September. Okay? And so it's hard for me to comment and make a commitment about whether Senator Dodd would support it. We don't know what the bill will look like. It's got to go through multiple committees and floor hearings and so forth. But on the face of it, I mean, if it were to simply create this environmental justice advisory committee within the department, and that's all that it did, Senator Dodd would be supportive. But until we read the bill, when it comes time for him to vote, I don't know what might else be in it.
So a heads up, we're hopeful. It's in appropriations on the Assembly side right now. DPR gave a really inflated price tag.
They all do.
And
It's a game.
We're pushing back heavily on that. We think
Yeah.
they're proposing more than $250,000 for each of these quarterly meetings,
Yeah.
Which is absurd.
No, but they're not the only ones. That do
Okay,
that.
that's
Every
good to know.
department-
That's the game.
It's a game.
All right. Good. Does anybody have anything else
So
to comment on that?
let me follow up, because, she's talking farm workers. I want to move into another area that we have some concerns about, and that's around schools. These pesticides are sprayed and used, and they drift up to 7.5 miles. They've documented that, and they know that. So we have issues with schools. So we have not only school staff that's aware of this, but we have children who have no control over this. And their parents are sending their kids to school thinking, what, my kid's safe? And they're being poisoned? This is a real concern. It's a human rights issue. It becomes a human rights issue because these farms are located in fields, and the fields are close to schools. And if teachers don't have the ability to care for their kids, look out for their health.
Well, it's the same issue that
Yeah.
Ezra
It's
just said.
Monterey
I
Bay.
mean,
Except now we're
it's not
dealing-
just a college campus and the students. It's,
Right, these are kids
it's
that have no
schools, it's
say.
homes,
Homes,
it's,
absolutely.
These are elementary kids. We have
Right.
one site in Ohlone School in Monterey
Right.
County that's monitored, and it's constantly over
Right.
and above what's
Okay.
allowed. So we bring that forward. We appreciate what Senator Dodd can do.
all right.
And if I might, just the last campaign issue that we're working on is the fumigant pesticide 1,3-dichloropropene. It's got a really dark history. As I mentioned, nobody's heard of it, and yet it's heavily, heavily used. It's a Dow Chemical pesticide, and it was banned completely in California for 5 years back in 1990. It was brought back under pressure from industry, and Dow was allowed to create rules for its use and monitor those rules. The years rolled by, there was once they basically Dow established a use cap per 6 by 6 square mile township for the chemical. They monitored use within each township, stopped any further use once it hit that cap, but the cap wasn't quite high enough, so they're always pushing for exceedances and waivers and rollovers from prior years. Finally, we sued DPR for an underground regulation. They basically had a regulation that they were allowing Dow to run, and the court agreed with us. DPR appealed, took 3 years, we won on appeal. DPR then was forced to do a regulation for DPR, and they, for 13D, and they were ordered to work in concert with OEHA, the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. They did not do that. They decided that part of the ruling didn't apply to them. We sued again. They lost again. They now have to do a new regulation for farm workers. But what they've decided is that they're going to go with, they've calculated, based on industry science, a cancer risk level that's 14 times more relaxed than the one that OEHA has proposed. OEHA says that the ambient level, annual average air concentration can be 0.04 parts per billion before it causes more than 1 in 100,000 extra cancer cases. DPR has proposed a regulation that would achieve a target 14 times more relaxed than that. So now the court has ordered them, no, for farm workers at least, you have to develop a regulation that follows OEHA. You can go ahead with your horrible regulation for residents, and that's what DPR is going to do. They're just about to announce the homeowner, resident, non-occupational bystander regulation using their really relaxed cancer risk level, and then a separate one for farm workers with a much more stringent risk level. We think that's very strange, a very odd thing to do. So pushing DPR that all, that OEHA scientists have declared what's safe, and there's absolutely no reason for DPR to ignore the recommendation of their sister agency. They're both agencies within Cali, PA.
I was at the hearing at the last DPR in February, and we had over 100 farm workers there, and each one of them had stories with 2 minutes per story, and everyone was talking about how they just lost their father, their son has cancer, stories of different kinds of health issues, and it's all because of the pesticides being used in our fields and affecting our communities.
Right. We read about that all the time.
And again, tying back to the bill, we just feel that instead of our comment letters and our individual meetings that we managed to get with DPR, if there were some true public-facing accountability,
Right.
that maybe DPR could be on record explaining how, why are you ignoring OEHA for this group of people, and obviously the court has ordered you not to ignore it for this other group of people. How do you reconcile that? We'd love some public answers.
Well, hopefully they give you what you're asking for. I mean, I have to be honest with you, so this is the first time we've heard of these issues at all. I'm glad you came in, first of all, because now we're aware of that. As a representative of a variety of constituents, so Senator Dodd's district is largely an agricultural district. Yolo County, Solano County, agriculture is the #1 industry. So he represents farm workers who work there. He represents school children. We have college campuses and many residents, but he also represents agricultural interests. The point I'm trying to make is that what you have said to me is very serious stuff, and I don't think Senator Dodd or myself, anybody here in this office, would deny the impact of pesticides. It's dangerous stuff. But, I can't say this, that, or the other thing. This is the first time we've heard of these issues. We'd want to do a little bit more research. Hey, we've heard this, that, about this regulation, that it's 14 times what OEHA has recommended. Why do you do that? We'd want to know.
Right.
Okay? And if the answer is unsatisfactory, then Senator Dodd's going to be with you. Okay?
Yeah, super.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I mean,
Your area mirrors our area. We're largely agriculture. It's #1 in our area.
Yeah.
The salad bowl of the world.
is this 13D, is that it?
Yes,
13D.
very good.
Is it only used on certain crops, or is it a general application?
It's most heavily used on strawberries on the coast, almonds in the valley, but it's used on about, I forget the exact number, but like 50 different crops.
Okay.
Very
It's used on
heavily used.
grapes as well, because we have a large grape industry. around
Truly.
that.
So, well, that's something we're going to be concerned about because we're such a huge grape growing region in the senator's district. So,
And one other thing about this chemical is it's not one of those ones that's a consumer concern. It doesn't leave a residue on fruit, on the crop. It's a pre-plant fumigant that's just used in the soil. So the impact is solely borne by people that live
the
near where
roots
it's
don't
used.
pull it up out of the soil, and
No, it's not
Interesting.
one that shows up as a residue. So,
yeah, so
you
you're really
might-
concerned about the way it spreads
Exactly,
and
it's a gas.
inhaling, getting on your skin,
Right.
that sort of thing.
And DPR, as Robert noted, has recorded it drifting 7 miles.
How many? 7 months.
7.
7
Yeah.
miles.
Okay. I
It
do.
looks like a farm.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It
I
looks
can
like a
imagine.
farm.
I really appreciate, I mean, like I said, this is the first time we've heard, not pesticide. You know, we have UC Davis in our district.
Okay.
So,
Okay, great.
there's an incredible amount of research going
Yep.
on at UC Davis with regards to non-chemical pesticides and herbicides and things like that. We've talked to some of the manufacturers that have spun off the research at Davis, and they're locating in our region, like
Nice.
Woodland and Winters. Small businesses that are trying to get a foothold to provide an alternative. And we want to support that. We are very supportive of the businesses in our district that want to, which is part of the issue here. I mean, you can understand the farmers wanting to protect their crops, but they should protect their crops with some products that are safer
Right.
and biological,
Exactly. Exactly.
biological herbicides and pesticides. So we're very supportive of that, and we push that quite a bit. Senator Dodd is very supportive. It's a long process before products like that find their way into the mainstream of use, but you know, that's about the closest we've heard to this whole thing. So
Nice.
I'm glad you've come by, and I'm a bit more educated, and we'll
Excellent.
look into this further.
Super. Thank you.
Happy to meet with you all and see what's going on. Tell me a little bit about your group and
Exactly. First, how much time have we got?
I think about 15
15
minutes.
minutes.
Yeah.
That
We have a
helps.
little leeway.
Right.
It's not.
Yes, this is a bit of false advertising. All live in Senator Laird's district, either in Monterey or Santa Cruz counties.
Right.
And we're here in solidarity, of course, with the valley and with very similar issues, and ours is pesticides. And I'm Mark Weller. I work for Californians for Pesticide Reform, which is a statewide organization of a network actually of 200 organizations that seek to reduce pesticide harms throughout the state. And we're here for 3 reasons. One is the regular stuff, a bill that we want, once it gets through the assembly, we want, actually even before if we could, we want Senator Laird's support. And that's AB 652, which is simply to establish an Environmental Justice Advisory Committee within the Department of Pesticide Regulation, because we are not being heard and want to be. And the 2 more unusual asks are we're asking the senator to contact the Department of Pesticide Regulation on 2 issues. The department is proposing 2 things. One is they're proposing a new regulation for a pesticide called 1,3-D, which is used, it's the 3rd most used pesticide in our region. It's banned in 34 countries. It's awful, but we're simply saying they need to make a regulation that keeps it under the level that our state toxicologists at OEHA say is safe. Right now, the Department of Pesticide Regulation is proposing to allow 14 times more in the air of 1,3-D than what OEHA says is safe. And we think that's racist, basically, because all this stuff is used in areas that are mostly indigenous and Latino population. And then the 3rd thing is we want the Senator Laird to go to DPR and say, hey, you're proposing this statewide notification system, and we're excited about that fact, and we push them to do that, they're gonna do that. Yeah, but we're flabbergasted because their proposal is not to include the location of the pesticide application in the notification. How can you have notification without location? It's insane, and so we're asking Senator Laird to say to DPR, hey, when you're making the system, at least tell us where the application is happening.
Did they provide some
So
type
we-
of justification as to why they won't provide the location? Because having worked with the senator when he was resources secretary, we worked a lot on regulations on hydraulic fracturing or fracking. And it was one of the core functions, which was to notify people that you're going to be doing these types of activities in a region that's close to them and where it is. And it's sort of
But
a,
we'd like that with the pesticide.
Yeah.
That's
So-
what we're asking for.
We haven't heard a good reason. They are offering to tell us within 1 square mile. So it would be like the police show up at your house, they say, excuse me, there's a guy who's shooting cancer-causing chemicals into the air, be careful. We're like, oh, where is he, officer? Somewhere in the square mile. I mean, that's useless to us, right? Be aware.
And then the other issue with that chemical is that it drifts.
yes.
Yeah.
So 1 square mile, and then.
And you don't know which way the wind is drifting.
Right.
And that, I mean, it's a weather variable
We've
issue.
had cases where it's drifted 7.5 miles from where the application was. So how's 1 square mile gonna work? A notification for something that drifts.
So those are the three, and then we went a little more detail, being
Please do,
respectful
yeah.
of time. But as for the bill, it's simply to, because we're having trouble getting the Department of Pesticide Regulation to listen, and this trouble goes back even before Department of Pesticide Regulation exists. So first, I jumped ahead of the introductions, which is,
Good afternoon, brother. I believe we met on other occasions. My name is Danielle Dodge, Senior. I am the president of the Monterey Bay Central Labor Council, but I'm also double dipping today. I'm with the Cabrillo College Federation of Teachers. It's a AFT 4400.
That's
And
fantastic.
me and brother.
You got a lot going on here
Me and
today.
brother, yeah,
Yeah.
it's me and brother Laird, I'm a former campaign worker for John Laird's staff.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Special Senate race. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, no, you and I could have, I remember that
I have
well.
all the book. I have all the whole book
Yeah.
documented. But in saying that, what I will leave others to be able to explain. I am a resident of the community of Watsonville. Pesticides are being applied right immediately outside elementary schools and the city limits. So the 1 square mile that we're talking about affects thousands, literally thousands of the residents. I'm a former elected official in the city of Watsonville. It affects thousands of our community, and that does it all over the Monterey Bay area. So when we're talking about establishing a Justice Advisory Committee at the DPR, that is something, it's a committee we're talking about. We're not even talking about other regulations, the trials and tribulations our community goes through. So we really ask for support for Brother Laird on that. So thank you for giving me a moment.
Thank you, appreciate that.
So my name is Pedro Enriquez. I work with Community Water Center. So we're a nonprofit. Right now my office is out of Watsonville. So we try to make sure people get safe, clean, and affordable drinking water. And I'm here today as an ally, someone that also works in environmental justice, as we know, our drinking water and the pesticides that get applied are all connected. So
It's a very significant issue around the state, the Central Valley, but also
That's right.
within the district. And that's one of those
Correct.
things, having worked in the water world for quite some time, this notion that we would have undrinkable water or undeliverable water in several parts of the most wealthy nation state the planet's ever created is hugely problematic.
yeah, I mean, the more I'm in it, the more I realize how bad it is, and how people, unfortunately, sometimes we meet with a lot of farm workers and they don't know what's in their water. This chemical 1,3-D, it's the chemical that was there before, 1,2,3-TCP, was banned in the late 80s, but we're still seeing it come up in people's water. And unfortunately, I've met with people that, they know they're not supposed to drink their water or cook with it because it has nitrates, but 1,2,3-TCP enters your skin through water vapors. So they're taking hot showers and they don't understand that that's a carcinogenic compound that's entering them. So, and unfortunately what it really takes is us driving out into the farms, finding them, not getting attacked by their dogs, and, being able to talk to them to make that connection. So, these compounds affect people and the workers of the area, and unfortunately, like, they find out later that they're being negatively affected. So we want to prevent that now.
My name is Olga Reina. I come from Monterey County, Salinas, and I'm with United Farm Workers. And pesticide use has been one of our issues in the past that has been and will be unless we establish something. So AB 652 is establishing an environmental justice advisory committee that would provide us with, the members would be part of the community where these pesticides are being used, and this committee would provide feedback to the regulatory, and it would just help the whole situation. We need it so bad because we don't have anything like that.
Instead of you having to write a letter to a nameless, faceless bureaucrat,
Right.
it gives you the opportunity to actually have that voice. And so I understand sort of the concept behind the bill. I know with assembly bills, since we have so many bills moving through the Senate, and John's Senator Laird's on so many big committees, that we tend to focus on the Senate first, and then we'll see what comes over. But always appreciate getting a highlight of the bills that are headed our way, particularly something like this that could have a real positive impact on the community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Sarah. I'm a student at CSU Monterey Bay, and I'm from Watsonville. And I lost my mom to cancer last year, so this is an issue that's really important to me.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
My name is Ryan Bradley, Sacramento native, but currently at CSUMB for college and future resident. Where our housing is, so my main thing is the actual notification of where the pesticides are sprayed. Our housing is less than a mile from the actual farmlands in Salinas, and campus is just about 2 miles, with the farthest recorded drifts sometimes being of 7 miles. So that's well within the boundaries of where it may drift.
Yeah.
And with potentially thousands of college students roaming around from all over the country, coming here and then being potentially exposed to these chemicals that are going to hurt them potentially for the rest of their life. It would be nice to be able to at least get some notification of where exactly it is. Then maybe college can be canceled for that day, or we can stay in our housing, stay indoors.
Some type of alert. Something that would give you some clarity about what's in the air.
Have
right?
some sort of preventative measures to help us stay safe.
And this pesticide, what types of crops is it typically used on?
Berries,
Okay.
and grapes.
Got it.
So in the Pajaro Valley, it's one of the highest concentrations of 1,3-D use in the state.
And so
because
really,
of
that's the
berries.
entire district between the berries and the grapes.
And then the
That's-
Salinas Valley,
Yeah.
it's grapes. But it's used on other things too, and it's the third most used pesticide in our region. Again, it's banned in 34 countries. In the European Union, they banned it because their scientists say it causes genetic damage. In California, we recognize it as a carcinogen, and other scientists have pointed to it causing lung damage. It's also a toxic air contaminant officially, and its use is not going down. And DPR is proposing to allow for even more. And we just think that's racist and insane. So we really hope that Senator Laird can contact DPR about that. And then the other issue, as Ryan and others were pointing out, was about notification. If we don't know where the application is happening, we can't take the precautions that scientists tell us we need to take. And those are, if people have vulnerable lungs, you keep them indoors, right? You close your windows, close the doors, take the clothes off the line outside, make sure the kids' toys are inside and clean. That won't prevent us from being harmed, but it will reduce the risk, that's what the scientists. And one of the major studies on this kind of stuff was done in the Salinas Valley by the Chamacos team at UC Berkeley. And I hope Senator Laird can look into some of that too, because that's been going on for more than 20 years now, and it's really revealing and concerning. So those are the two things. And then AB 652, one of the reasons we're here is it's now in suspense because the Department of Pesticide Regulation does not want this bill to pass. We know that because they went before the Appropriations Committee and said it would cost $1.1 million. And we're thinking, 4 meetings a year, that's $275,000 a meeting. Are we having this in Mar-a-Lago? I mean, whoa.
So are these commissioners,
I mean,
are these advisory board members going to be paid?
Yeah, we organize meetings all the time. We can't even imagine a meeting costing that much. So we would love this for you to share this.
Mar-a-Lago treatment, kind of like Pebble Beach. You can bet that if this was affecting the residents of Pebble Beach, there would be some action taken immediately. The fact that it's affecting school children, like we have one site, there's actually a testing site there near the school, and it's over the levels all the time. Can you imagine if that was in Pebble Beach, what would happen?
Yeah, no, that.
And I've known John
Yeah.
since city
Yeah.
council days,
Yeah.
back with the Santa Cruz Action Network, so we go back a ways. He knows who I am. And, you know, this has got to stop. This is a human rights issue.
I'm looking forward to talking to him about this.
It's a
So,
human rights issue.
yeah.
We've got to protect children.
Are there other models for environmental justice advisory boards within other regulatory?
Sure.
So,
Yeah,
CARB,
so-
CARB had, yeah, I thought CARB had one.
So we have one called Safer for water. So
Okay.
we were able to get community members to come up to Sacramento and, you know, make sure everybody's involved, because there's a lot of small towns, you know, going down the valley that, you know, you have to really reach out to, and their concerns are almost mute to the state.
Yep.
So we need someone that can bring that up and amplify it. So it's been working great for us, and we have a broad network of community members that, you know, are farm workers or retired of doing that now have a say in the state. It's changed a lot of like the power that we have.
It really has. Over the past decade or so, you've really seen this arc where the voices that actually matter, the people who are actually impacted by these things, are gaining more of a voice. It's not as much of a voice as is needed sometimes. We were very fortunate in the Central Valley. They have a number of large dairies. And we were able to get a group of state senators down in late January to tour some of these areas and hear from the people who are actually impacted by the dairies. And as such, there is some pretty influential legislation that's moving through this year by Senator Allen that's going to have some impact on that. So when people do actually get a voice, and when legislators actually see the impacts to these communities, there's a lot of value in that. And so I do understand what Assemblymember Lee is trying to do with this bill, so appreciate that. Yeah, and again, knowing that there's models like this
Right.
for other agencies around the
Absolutely.
state, and knowing that pesticides are something that have a real impact on EJ communities, that's something we need to focus on.
Right.
So,
Yep.
Don't need to reinvent the wheel.
nope,
That's great.
that's the thing. It's all there, and people just need a voice. So appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, it's just interesting that during this time period when you can press a button, we could all be video conferencing with each other, that we're still asking for participatory government to be able to
Yeah.
hear the concerns of the people. And so the resistance that was being met with the Department of Pesticide, we're actually just shocked at it, and at times wondering how that borders on, you know, the word communities of color all throughout John's district,
Yep.
as you well know. And so this is really impacting the children in those districts, the older people, et cetera. Recently in Pajaro, you as I'm sure you're well aware of, which is another meeting, I know that this pesticide use is bubbled up to be actually visible.
And that's actually a huge issue with the flooding. I mean, not only the initial destruction of the flooding, but the pollution that's occurred by doing just as you say. That's-
This points out the need to be able to address those situations ahead of time, because that was literally the holdup in going back into Pajaro, was the inspection to be able to allow, you know, the toxicity.
And their water?
My name is Mark Weller. I'm with Californians for Pesticide Reform. We're a network of more than 200 organizations across the state of California trying to come together to reduce pesticide harms throughout the state. And we have this group that's traveled, in some cases, a long way to be here today. And so we are so happy that Assemblymember Addis and her staff are willing to meet. And what's your name?
Jason.
Jason, okay. Pleasure to meet you, Jason. Would you mind if we started with some introductions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice to meet you, Jason. I'm a student at the Greenfield High School. My name is Santiago Torres, and I'm an active youth member of SAS.
Great.
Hello, Jason. My name is Anthony. I attend also Greenfield High School, and I'm a youth member for SAS.
I'm Ryan Bradley. I'm from CSUMB, but I also am with Californians for Pesticide Reform and also Constituent.
Great.
My name is Olga Reina. I come from Monterey County, Salinas, and I represent the United Farm Workers Union of the area.
Great.
There you go. West White, just a member of SAS, I guess.
Hi, I'm Pedro Enriquez, and I'm from Community Water Center. So I'm also a constituent, just here as another environmental justice organization, you know, just here to support.
And Jason, my name's Mark Waller again, and you heard the acronym SAS. That's for Safe Ag, Safe Schools, which is the regional branch of California's pesticide reform in Assemblymember Addis's district.
Right. I'm Robert Chakanaka. I'm here with the Monterey Bay Central Labor Council. I'm retired and the past president. And I started, which we're proud to have.
Great.
We really need to step up because it's been 20 years of this. Oh man. That's just in the Monterey Bay area, so it's been going on.
Yeah. Great.
Introduction, Sarah, just who you are and who you're with.
My name is Sarah. I'm a student at CSUMB, and I'm volunteering with Californians for Pesticide Reform.
It's a special day for you today, though. Why else are you in Sacramento?
I'm here because my mom was nominated for an award. She passed away last year, but she was nominated for an award for sexual violence, for work that she did for sexual and domestic violence. So we just celebrated that.
Oh, great. That's great. Yeah. So, Jason, we have 3 issues that we'd like to discuss with you, and that you can pass on to Assemblymember Addis. One is a bill, and then 2 others are requests. Okay. The bill is AB 652, which is to establish an Environmental Justice Advisory Committee within the Department of Pesticide Regulation.
It's a lead bill, right?
Yep. Sorry.
It's a lead bill.
Yes.
Yes. And that's it's the lead bill, exactly. And the other 2, we are requesting that the Assembly member contact the Department of Pesticide Regulation over 2 issues. One is that they've made 2 proposals. One proposal involves a pesticide that is banned in 34 countries, but our major concern about this bill, this proposal, is they're proposing to allow for 14 times more of this pesticide, which is abbreviated 13D, as in dog, 13D, in the air, then the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment says it's safe.
Great.
Okay, they've set a cancer risk level, and DPR is saying, well, we're going to allow 14 times more than that. And then, so we want Assemblymember Addis to contact DPR and say, hey, we want you to regulate it to OEHA's standard. Right?
Okay.
And then the third thing is DPR has proposed, the Department of Pesticide Regulation, DPR, has proposed a statewide notification plan for pesticides, which we're excited about. But to our utter, I don't even know what word to use. We can't dismay is one. They're not including the location of where they're applying the pesticide.
Does that make any sense?
We don't understand how we're going to take precautions, which is the whole point, if we don't know where the applications are happening.
Do they have I mean, I'm assuming they have some rationale, or their proposed rationale for why.
Well,
we can't understand that.
They don't give a good one.
Yeah.
They say we're telling you within a 1 block square, with a 1 mile square. But if we're seeing, some guy, if a cop comes to our door, says, hey, there's a guy out there, he's spraying cancer-causing chemical in the air. We say, oh, officer, my gosh, thank you for telling us. Well, where is he? He's somewhere within this 1 mile square.
Okay.
I mean, that's useless to us, right? That's what we're worried about. So, our group wants to comment on this, so I'm going to start with the bill, because I know that's usually what people want to do, but we really do want the Assembly to follow up on the other 2 too. And that is establishing an Environmental Justice Advisory Committee at the Department of Pesticide Regulation. It's in suspense now at the Appropriations Committee. We think it is ridiculous why it is, but we think it'll get out. And so we're urging Assemblymember support. But Ryan, did you want to say some more about the establishing an I'm sorry, not you. Robert, did you want to? Sorry,
it'd be good if she could sign on the AB 650 and be a co-signer. That'd be great. But I first want to ask you, you're in favor of human rights. So this comes to a human rights issue. Because we're spraying children now. We've got schools that have monitoring devices that say we're over the limit. And yet nothing's being done about it. There's no, oh, we gotta stop, oh, we gotta take more precautions. So we're polluting kids with poisons.
Okay.
Who does that in a society? Who does that? And that's a human rights issue.
Okay.
We have to really take that seriously, because down the line, these young people are gonna come up and go, hey, what the hell were you doing? You weren't taking care of us, you were watching out for us, and we're not. That's why we're here. We've gotta step up.
Gotcha.
And the fight to be heard goes back to the United Farm Workers, right, Olga? I
Right,
mean, like
right.
more than 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And so we're just saying, we need to establish something official
Yeah.
so that communities, indigenous and Latino communities especially, the farm communities, can be heard.
Yeah.
And I know, Olga, you spoke
Yeah,
eloquently
I wanted to
that
say
the other
about,
day.
this bill would establish an advisory committee, but we don't have one right now that would regulate the pesticides. And this committee would be part of community members like indigenous tribal groups. You'd have farm workers in this, and they would report back to the pesticide committee to say what's going on with this, you know, and that would help us to follow up on this. So we would like the support.
Yeah, so I'll definitely, I mean, this is definitely something obviously.
This is something very important to us.
Yeah, and I'll, you know, when it gets to the
Regulatory
floor, I'll
committee.
definitely make sure that I flag it for the member and she knows all about it. I mean, that's, you know, we do that anyway, but if, you know, groups of folks come in and it's this, you know, you feel this strongly about it, then definitely something I'll flag for her.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's around schools.
Yeah,
And like Mark was saying, 1 mile.
yeah,
How many schools are in the 1 mile block?
yeah.
And what schools are gonna get hit? And what are you gonna tell the kids? Oh, stay indoors,
Yeah.
no recess for you today?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
It's outrageous.
Gotcha.
Did anybody else want to comment
Did you
on
want
the
to comment
bill?
on that one?
No, well, go ahead. If you
Well,
want to.
yeah, I'm personally in support of this because for our organization, we did something similar, but we have a community members that are part of SAFER. So they come up to Sacramento and they also lobby for the interest of rural community members that usually don't get a voice. So unfortunately, sometimes we have parcels of land surrounded by lots and lots and lots of farms. So voices and concerns are drowned out, you know, when it comes to water issues. So, you know, it's analogous to this bill to say that, you know, the voices need to be represented and need to be heard. So having a direct pipeline to make that happen and to have a connection with Sacramento is incredibly important because otherwise, you know, unfortunately the future of the area and the health of the area is completely neglected.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason it's in suspense is because the Department of Pesticide Regulation obviously does not want this committee.
Sure.
So they said it would cost $1.1 million a year. It's like,
goes into suspense.
wait a minute,
Yeah.
4 meetings, that's $275,000 a meeting. Are we having these in Mar-a-Lago? I mean,
Yeah.
what could possibly cost that much?
Yeah. Suspense is just, things end up going
You
there.
can rest assured that if
Yeah.
Pebble Beach was affected by these pesticides, that Don would hear about it in this thing, so it's the people out here.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the children
Sure.
in particular.
Alright, so that brings us to our kind of the informal requests where we're hoping that the assembly member can talk to, communicate, text, call,
Sure.
march over there, whatever. But DPR is proposing to allow 14 times more cancer-causing 1,3-D, which is TILO, it's a fumigant, than OEHA says is safe. It's our position that that's environmental racism because 1,3-D is concentrated in indigenous and Latino communities. I mean, like,
Yeah.
more than 3/4 of it are used in
where the
places
fields
that
are.
are,
Yeah.
It's with the agriculture. Again, if it were Pebble Beach,
Yeah.
which it's not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. And is there currently no regulation whatsoever?
So there's a regulation that we had to challenge in court, meaning California's pesticide reform, and we won. But it's just taking, and so what we won was they had to make a new regulation,
Okay.
and
this
now
is
this new regulation is
Yeah.
total garbage.
Okay.
14
Sure. Yeah, and so it just, I mean, everyone, there's this Prop 65 process. So back in '86, the people of California overwhelmingly said, we want to know when chemicals that cause cancer or reproductive and developmental damage are used so we can protect ourselves, we can avoid it, right? Part of that process is the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment can set safe harbor levels. levels at which, you know, the state considers it safe to be exposed to, but above which we don't want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's remarkable about this, the Department of Pesticide Regulation making a regulation and not even listening to another agency within Cal EPA. I mean, it's just insane. So I know, Pedro, you wanted to comment on one
Yeah,
of these.
so we're working with a previous version of 13D that became illegal in the late 80s. That was also a pesticide, but unfortunately it sunk down into the water basins. And people on wells, you know, end up using the water. And unfortunately too, I've met a lot of, you know, farm workers that we reach out to them and they know they can't drink their water, they know they can't cook with it. But this previous version of the pesticide gets into your skin if you're exposed to the steam. So sometimes people are taking hot showers and they're unknowingly ingesting the steam. So anything that has to do with pesticides has the, you know, has the danger of affecting people in the future, and unfortunately sometimes we don't even have the parameters or ways of cleaning the water. So this isn't, you know, just the pesticide issue, it's the whole environment and people's livelihoods. You know, at the community water center we think, you know, having clean, safe, affordable drinking water is a necessity for having a dignified life. And, you know, all these parameters that we're advocating for to try to protect people's, like, you know, safe, you know, environment are necessary to have a decent human life. And, you know, that's why I'm here from Community Water Center to support, to say that this is also something that affects everybody we know.
Yeah.
So.
And that's good to point, that was banned 30 years ago.
And it's still.
And then we have DDT, which was banned 50 years ago, and we're still on DDT.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's next for this one?
Gotcha. Yeah. And so I obviously can't speak for the assembly myself.
Yeah.
But, you know, I can recommend and I can, you know, I can do all these things. So I would definitely bring these before her and then make sure that she knows about them and knows that they're a problem.
Okay.
But I just obviously I can't say how she's gonna vote or what she's gonna support because that's just not.
We
not
understand. And
So,
we also know you can pass on the stories,
100%.
right?
Yep. And that's my job right there. So I'll definitely do that.
Thanks. And this T-loan is used in the Salinas and Pajaro valleys a lot, but I mean, it can drift for many miles at harmful levels. The third highest recording ever was from an application 7.5 miles away.
Okay.
So it's dangerous stuff. And Santiago had a scary moment with his family when, you know, with his brother.
Yeah, so my brother suffered from an asthma attack like back in 2019 or 2020 because they sprayed this stuff in a field and it drifted to the school. And he suffered from an asthma attack and he was hospitalized because of it. And it was from a 13D application, so that's why we need to know where they're applying them and like when they're gonna apply it, so we could be informed for our safety.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
Thanks. All right, so that's two. We want somebody member Addis to tell DPR, look, you gotta regulate to the safe level. It's not fair to these communities to allow for 14 times more than what the state says is safe.
And if this doesn't end up happening through the department, would you look at a legislative avenue for this, or is that, I know people are a little leery of, but
it's really hard to get
it's
anything regarding pesticides through. So we're hoping DPR will do the right thing, but we might have to rely on lawsuits, or we might have to try a bill. Exactly. Okay. And then finally, the third thing. I mean, the main thing about that is the exact location.
You want it,
We want them to put the exact location. Here is our leave behind that you can. We hope that you can share with the assembly member. As you're leaving, Ryan, did you want to add something else about that?
Yeah, about the notification. So I'm from CSUMB, the state school in Monterey itself, in where the actual student housing is located. It's less than 2 miles from the farms in the Salinas Valley where they're spraying everything. So us being the students, we have no clue. We don't even get any notification in general, but at least the specific would allow us just to stay either in our housing or maybe leave for the day and go somewhere maybe up north or whatnot. So having a specified location to protect our health and our future.
Makes sense.